Welcome, Alicia. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Sabrina, I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm also very excited to have you. Can you just start by sharing a little bit about you and how you got started?
So, my whole life, Sabrina, I wanted to be a teacher from as far back as I can remember. And so, of course, when I looked for colleges, I focused on teacher colleges. And from there, I discovered the secondary world is where I wanted to be, teaching middle and high school students. And so, I found a teaching position in Charleston, South Carolina, teaching middle school social studies. And I stayed in that role for about 8 years. And then I left the classroom when I had my babies to stay home with them for a little bit. Shortly thereafter, I realized I needed to get back to work. And so I stumbled, Sabrina, into the world of virtual education. It was just a happy circumstance that there was a social studies position. And keep in mind, this was 2009. So long before COVID or anyone even fully understood what virtual education was. I just knew I needed a job, and there was one where I could continue to stay home with my babies, yet still do what I love. And when I entered that space, I realized very, very quickly the tremendous power that that space has to really help students thrive and to be their best selves. And so, what started as just a need, right? Like something I needed and filled up that void in my life became a calling and a passion. And so when that happens, you tend to find your way into leadership. And so I went from being a teacher to an administrator, which I never ever thought would happen. But I became assistant principal, and eventually the school leader, the leader of the entire organization.
Wow.
And while doing that, I realized there was another calling that was pushing on me, and that was to help as many people as possible in the space, not just those within my small community here in South Carolina. And so that is when I launched my business, my consulting business.
That is a lot to take in. It seemed like you kind of hopped and skipped a few times there. So, what was it that really inspired you to be more passionate about digital training and education?
It is the realization that we can truly tailor learning to the individual child. And think about, and for your audience members who might not know a lot about education, just think about your time in a classroom. There was probably 25 or 30 students and one teacher. And so it's nearly impossible when that is happening for that teacher to be able to help each student exactly where they are. So teachers in the classroom tend to teach to the middle and then take, a few moments here and there to meet one-on-one with kids that are either further ahead or behind. Whereas in the virtual space, we can take the learning and tailor it because of the flexibility of the schedule and meet those students exactly where they are. So we can help you, Sabrina, if you are ahead, and we can help Alicia if she's behind, and we can create schedules that allow us to really maximize the learning. So it's magical, and it's amazing to have been a part of and to have watched so many students find such great success in this space.
Oh, I can only imagine. That's actually really inspiring. So,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I'm going to back it up just a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you share some of the earlier challenges that you faced when you first began training in the digital space?
Yes. So again, it was 2009, and we did not have this technology, Sabrina. There were no Zoom
Papers.
calls. There
Yeah.
were no Google Meets. FaceTime was brand new. And so in the early days, it really was corresponding with email or phone calls. And that does not really allow for relationship building. And we know every person on the planet knows the best way to help people is by that human connection, right? Like having these kind of conversations, talking with one another. And so when we were engaging with students and staff, we could never see each other. We could only hear on the phone or read words on the computer. And so that was a challenge to bridge that gap for the first few years. But when this technology became available in about 2013, 2014, more readily available, I should say,
Internet.
that is when the trajectory of our school really took off because we were able to see our students and see our staff members and really engage and truly help move people forward. And so that challenge in the early days was tough. I won't lie. It was a tough time to try to figure out how to get to know our students without this capability.
Yeah, I can actually picture that because when the internet and everything came out, you think back to dial up and how slow the processing speeds were. And
Mm.
I think around 2013, it had advanced just a little bit further to where we did have faster connections.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was still all of those updates and things that you would have to process through on your computer to get yourself up to speed. And nobody really
Uh-huh.
knew how to navigate that yet. So you're
No, and
very brave.
especially our students, really. The teachers and the staff, we tended to be I don't want to call us cutting edge, but we were thinking outside the box and we were willing to take chances because we were in a space that was brand new. But for some of our students, they came to us just because they had nowhere else to go. And so we did have that challenge too with their technology, right? Like they didn't have the most up-to-date ways to
Yeah.
work and communicate or reliable internet or all those things. So that was a challenge as well.
So what surprised you the most during those initial experiences?
What surprised me was the need for a different type of education. Um, I did not go to college and go into the profession thinking one day I'm going to do something totally different than go into a school building and teach my students face to face. And so when I got to virtual education, I saw immediately the need. Our school grew tremendously. Even back then in 2009, I mean, we had tremendous growth year after year because students and families were looking for something different. And that really surprised me that, oh, wait, this model is not working for everyone. This traditional model we've used forever, some people need some other option. And that was surprising, but in a good way to me that people were able to find an option that would work for their family.
Yes, and that's great to hear. I think with some of those rapid changes, why do you believe it's critical for both leaders and teachers to upgrade those digital skills?
Well,
Especially when we're thinking now. Sorry.
yes, I was going to say this is not going away. I mean, this way of working and way of communicating is not ending. And so, not just for teachers and staff that work in a fully digital space, but for all educators to know how to navigate this world in a way that's effective is crucial. Because even if you are in a traditional classroom, you're still going to send emails home, communicate with families that you maybe can't get into the building. You might have a student that needs some medical care that you can't provide at the school. And so you're trying to communicate with them. And so this allows us to continue to inspire and engage from afar when we do not have that ability to be right by side.
Oh, I love that. Continue to inspire and engage. We should
Mhm.
just post that.
Good luck.
What specific skills do you think that teachers should prioritize over others? Are there any recommendations?
Do you mean in the virtual space, in this space?
Yeah, specifically for teachers that are out there connecting with students and managing some of those challenges that you just spoke about.
First and foremost, authenticity is key in this space. I believe fully that you should enter it as your true self and not try to put up a formality or a virtual wall, if you will. And
Right.
that takes a little bit of courage because we're ourselves typically when we are next to each other. But when we're emailing or texting, Sometimes we tend to get either really brave and forget there's a human on the other side of that keyboard, and we might write or text things that we would not say to someone's face. And then when we enter these spaces, sometimes we turn off our cameras, or we, are looking at our second monitor, answering some emails and not present with the person right in front of us. And so I always say, be yourself and treat the space as if that person is sitting right next to you. So if you're email in a way with words that you would only use if you are right there next to someone, and not thinking of them as not a real human being. And when we humanize the space, that's when the magic happens.
Oh, I completely agree with you there. We've had so many examples of the same kinds of experiences in my field as well.
I know,
And
it's terrible. Terrible.
it is. Can you provide any examples of any tools, platforms, or just anything digitally that would be helpful for students today? Or not students, excuse me, educators.
There are a plethora of ways to engage in a fun, innovative way. And AI right now is taking the world for every person and making it limitless. So there are so many options for educators. But I'd like to keep it simple, because educators tend to be really overwhelmed and burdened with by schools, by districts, by school leaders. You have to do this, you have to do that. And so I always go back to the basics and say things like, if you want to send an email and you're a sparkly person, put in a little meme in the middle of your email, use a fun font, put some colors in your signature, just do something that brings the human side to the screen. I advise sending little videos. If you have a message to send to someone and you're not sure how the tone's going to come across in your email, or make sure that they fully understand your sentiment, record yourself. Send a 1-minute video explaining whatever it is, instead of just putting it into words. That again allows for that human connection. And then the final thing I always say is, do this. Don't just go back and forth in email. Don't send a text and think that, it's all done for the day. Set up one of these calls, have a conversation. Again, bring that human element into the space so that you can continue to connect and grow.
Oh, you're hitting to the root of my heart right here. I agree with you so much with everything that you just said, especially when it comes to, I've had a lot of people that just fire away an email that they're not exactly sure how I'm going to take it, but they didn't have the time, so they're just sending it quickly. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that a voice recording would actually be a little bit quicker in that way. So
it is. And at first, I will admit, I've got some friends that love the little voice recording. And I was like, oh my gosh, why is she sending me a voice recording? I don't have the time. I was saying this as the recipient. I don't have the time to hit play and listen to her words for 1 minute. But once I embraced it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much more efficient and effective, that I can hear what she has to say, and then I can respond with a voice recording to say, yes, I understand, we'll do it this way, whatever. It really is a time saver, and also builds that understanding in a faster way, as opposed to the back and forth and all the questions. Did you mean this? Why did you say that? It really cuts out a lot of that.
I love that. So how do you address their initial concerns and anxiety when working with some of these new tools, especially during training?
And change is hard, right? Change is hard. Change is scary. No one really loves change, right? They get used to doing something one way, and then they have to learn something new. That takes time. And so whenever I rolled anything new out, I always wanted to do it in this fashion, right? I didn't just want to push something out through email or a document to say, please read this and start doing. So I would always start with this, with the face-to-face, to see the people's face on camera, to know if they were mad, sad, confused, happy, anything, to know where we were, because you can't understand people's emotions and reactions to things if you don't see them, right? So we would push it out that way. And then I would always have what I called open office hours, where after the rollout, after the introduction to the new tool, I would say, okay, I'm going to be in my Zoom room from 9 to 11 on Friday morning. Try this out for a few days, write down your questions, and then come and see me on Friday, and we'll talk through your concerns. I'll help answer questions. And that wasn't a one and done, Sabrina. I mean, that would continue on for a couple weeks or months if necessary, as educators were starting something new. And so that was so crucial to make sure they knew I was there and listening. And there are times I'd listen and go, you're right, y'all, this is something we don't need to do anymore, or we need to change this. And so getting that constant feedback is so important to make sure that what you implement or what you're trying to do differently is actually helpful.
Such a great suggestion, and I think so easily overlooked.
It is. It is.
So, is there anything that you would have done a little bit differently?
Oh, yes. Lots of things I would have done differently. What I love is connecting with people. I love that. And coaching and supporting. And that basically comes back to being a teacher, right? Like I loved being a teacher. I never thought I'd be an administrator. And then I got into administration and I loved being assistant principal because then I was with the teachers and I was coaching the teachers. And as I moved up, the further up I moved, the further away I got from what I truly loved. You know, as a principal, I was still there. I still was with the teachers more so than the students. So I'd taken 2 steps away from the students. And by the time I got to school leader, I was removed from just about everything that brought me joy and that I was good at. You know, no longer was the students at all. I mean, I barely had any contact with students and families. And even with the teachers, I've had several steps between myself and the teachers. And so I wish, looking back now, that was a role that I knew wasn't the role for me. I knew that in my heart, but I was like, well, it's the next logical step. You know, where else do I go from here? And I wish instead of taking the step just because it seemed to be the most logical, I had listened to my heart and to my gut and said, you know what? No, you want to do what you're consulting. You want to do this business that you've dreamed of. Take that leap now. And so you can't change the past, right? You can't go back in time and do things differently. But I will say to anyone listening, if your gut is telling you this isn't what I need to do, and your heart is telling you you need to move in a different direction, just take a moment and listen, because those things are happening for a reason.
That's great advice. So, can you share any stories with us about your training, especially when we're thinking about getting started, that really stood out to you?
It comes back to connecting with the people. That's what my mission was in every single thing that I did and still do. I'm still doing virtual training today. So I want to make sure that I have a connection. And if that means taking time at the start of a training to get to know who I'm talking to, or, pausing in the middle to say, y'all look really confused. And even though I have a plan for how this goes, but I need to make sure that the people on the call are comfortable and are understanding what they need. There's nothing worse, Sabrina, than getting into one of these calls and someone's talking at you for an hour, 2 hours, showing a presentation, and you feel like, what am I even doing here? And so my goal is always to make these trainings as human-centered as possible, even with the space and the distance between us, so that it is as if we are all in the same room collaborating together and not isolated around sometimes the world.
Yeah. So in other words, so they're genuinely having an enjoyable experience that they can share with others.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Love that.
Yes. So many. And that's why I started this business of mine, is that so many organizations go into this space, again, forgetting the humans on the other side. And it becomes almost like a checklist. I've got to train them. So I'm going to do this Zoom call. I'm going to show my PowerPoint, and then I'm going to be done for the day. And they forget they're human beings that have questions, that have concerns, that have emotions and feelings, and maybe something has happened before they clicked the button to log on. So taking care of the people first and then moving into the content, the material. And that has served me well for many years. So I continue to do that to this day.
Perfect. I love to hear that. It's all about impact.
It is. It is.
Speaking of, what kind of impact have you seen on your employees and students both as a result of your leadership?
So we, again, started off in 2009, and it was all brand new, and we were learning as we went back then. There was no model to follow. There was no best practices that we could look to. We were literally building that plane while in flight. And when we got to that point of about 2013, 14, and we were allowed or able to connect in this way, we realized that this was what was missing in the early years, this connection, this ability to build relationships. And so our mission became building relationships with our students and each other. We knew we had all the goals that every school has. You know, all our students had to do all these things. We had to do well on the state tests. We had to have a good graduation rate. We knew all of those things, but we knew those things are not possible without relationships. And so we focused more on building relationships with our students than on just clicking off boxes of graduation rate and state test scores. And that actually allowed us to thrive. So when we stopped worrying so much about these state mandated goals and more about, no, we're going to just build relationships with the kids, and that will in turn help with graduation rate and state test scores and all the other things that we need to do. That's when we saw the greatest success.
I can see that you are so much ahead of your time then, because we're just hearing about a lot of what you're speaking to. I've heard within the past maybe 2 to 3 years in business. So I really commend you for going after it and really recognizing that, hey, this is what employees and students need right here, especially students.
Mm-hmm. Well, and people, I've heard that from other people before that, oh my gosh, you're so unique in this space. But I wasn't trying to be unique or different. Like, this is just me to my core. What I know to be true is that you have to take care of people before they're going to do the things that need to be done. You have to, right? They have to feel safe. They have to feel belonging. They have to feel cared for. And when you do that, then they're going to do their best, not just for you, but because they feel that sense of pride as well. And so I just always believed that in my heart of hearts. So I didn't know how to be any other way when I was a leader.
Well, you've done exceptional so far.
Thank you.
Let's get into some current trends and innovations. In your experience, what current trends in leadership and educational technology that both leaders and teachers should be aware of? Is there anything you would recommend?
So AI, again, is on the forefront of everyone's mind right now. And you have some educators, some school leaders diving all in all day. They are in, they are ready. Their AI should be everywhere and basically running the classrooms. And then you have other educators and school leaders going, that thing cannot be in my school. That has no place here. Don't let that in. No. The other thing I believe in strongly is extremes are never good. Right? Extremes are never good. It can never be one, all or nothing. I mean, we have got to be embracing in the middle. And so I would say to school leaders, to educators, you don't have to jump in feet first with your eyes closed and just adopt every AI platform, AI innovation that comes your way. But you can't turn a blind eye and think it's going away. And so finding that happy medium, doing your research, investigating what's the best practice here, what's the safest for our students, what's the safest for our staff. That's what should be happening. Not all in and not turning a blind eye, but just taking some time to research and go, this could be helpful. Let's see what tools can be helpful, what tools are safe for our students, safe for our staff, and then making that plan to implement what you come up with at the end of that research.
That's a really great suggestion. AI has definitely been something that's going to continue to grow and to be around. So I love that
Yes.
you're encouraging people to just learn a little bit about it, see what it
Just
can
like
do to
try
help
some, yeah.
you.
Yes, try
Yeah.
something. Try a little something. And then when it feels right, when you feel safe, when you feel comfortable, okay, then that might be the one that you can use.
So, how do you keep yourself updated with all of these ongoing trends? Is there any particular resources or communities that you like to follow?
I think you can tell, Sabrina, I'm a pretty social person and I'm not shy. And so I am one that still believes in the power of networking. And virtual networking for me has been amazing. And so when I see someone, let's say on LinkedIn, that is doing really cool things, or an organization like right now, I love what Magic School is doing. And so I follow them and I'll look at their products, and, I'll ask for meetings. I'll reach out to people and I'll say, hey, can we chat real quick? That is really cool what you're doing. I want to learn more about that. Now, I know not everybody has that very extroverted approach to their learning. And so, for those people, I would say there are so many free classes out there, so many free demo accounts that you can get from these companies. And so, just watch, just look, join. Doesn't have to be LinkedIn. Maybe it's Instagram. Maybe it's professional learning community within your district, and just watch and see what sparks your interest, and then take a little course, a virtual course. Ask the company if they have a free demo account that you can use and play around in. And so using what others are doing to inspire you and then learn from, that has been the way that I have continued to learn and grow in the field.
Oh, great suggestion. And as we're speaking to continuing to learn about these digital technologies that are coming up, what do you envision for the future of digital learning? Is there anything that you see that you think is going to take off?
I believe that we will see more of the traditional schools turning to digital platforms, digital opportunities. There's limitless possibilities, but it is taking those risks and making those changes that scares people the most. But I believe we're at the point where schools and leaders are almost desperate for a change. There's so much pressure coming from above. There's so much data coming out on, the COVID slide, learning loss, where we are compared to other countries, compared to, 40 years ago. And so I believe that now is the time people realize we have to make changes. And so I think they're going to start to turn to these digital options, even in your traditional school, and say, well, maybe we can do that here within the classroom. There's so many cool things out there, and it doesn't mean that we replace teachers. It doesn't mean that we are not still teaching and educating. It is just a different way of doing so. And I think and I hope, Sabrina, that we are there, we are ready to embrace that change and try to do things a little bit differently.
I think that was a really important point that you just made. We're not replacing teachers, anything like that. We're just looking to elevate the way students learn, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's it. You can't do this without teachers. You never, again, human connection is everything, And so, no one is saying go put the students in front of a computer for 8 hours a day and don't talk to them. But perhaps there's a platform, a product that they can use for 30 minutes to help elevate their learning.
That sounds super promising.
It is. I'm excited.
So, is there any potential challenges that you foresee, especially when we're talking about this digital evolution?
Mm-hmm. There are. I mean, I do fear that sometimes we jump into things too quickly, and without doing the research and taking the time to go, but wait, did we think about this? Did we consider that? And so I do fear there being, and it wouldn't last forever, but this quick adoption of things that maybe aren't the best. maybe things happen that we didn't think of or anticipate. And so that is always a concern, that we don't do our research. We don't take the time to really think through before rolling something out, that we hope is this quick fix that's going to solve all the world's problems. And then we find out, nope, that's not actually the case. And so with all this new exciting possibilities, that would be my fear and my caution, that before jumping all into anything, just take the time to really research and think through pros and cons, what could happen, and make sure that it is a good fit.
Great suggestion. So as we wrap up, Alicia, what advice would you give leaders or educators who are hesitant to dive into the digital technology and products?
I always say baby steps. Yep. Oh, baby steps. Always say baby steps. It is overwhelming. There's so much out there, so much out there. And again, change is scary, but finding small incremental changes that you and your staff are comfortable with and comfortable trying. And if you're an educator and you're trying something new in your classroom, the same is true for your students. You don't want to just take this big leap into this new change that's going to confuse, overwhelm, or scare your students. And so baby steps in, trying a little something new. And then when it doesn't work the way you want it to, tweaking it and maybe, trying something different, but not, again, turning that blind eye, but not jumping all in feet first without a parachute. So just slowly making your way into some of these changes and going from there.
Oh, I love your insight. It's so practical. It's so commonsensical.
Not revolutionary, I like to say, just to go back to the basics.
Well, yeah, that's usually where we see a lot of individuals having problems, is they're not keeping in mind what they kept in mind at the start of everything when they were just learning all of this. And so sometimes that's all it takes, is that reminder.
Yes.
Is there any special events or projects, conventions that you'll be making an appearance at this year?
I have a few this coming month. Next week, I'm at Beyond School Hours, a conference in Orlando, talking about how to network and how to build relationships in the virtual space. Woo. And then I am appearing at the Women's Expo, I believe that is February 18th, where I'll be talking about leading with sparkle and shine and positivity and joy. And then at the end of the month, I'll be in Atlanta at the Digital Learning Collaborative's annual conference, where I'm talking about all kinds of things, Sabrina. I've got lots of sessions there, all related back to digital education, with a focus on how to build relationships in this space. So those are my big three for this month, and I'm excited to go and share my knowledge.
Oh, I'm so excited to watch your progress through those events and keep an eye out for the recordings.
Yes, for sure.
So where can our listeners find you if they would like to connect with you or even just learn a little bit more about what you do?
Sure. So my website is sparkingupleadership.com, and there you'll get an overview of the services I provide and a little bit more about my story. But LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. That is, Sabrina, how you and I met and how I've met so many wonderful individuals. And so on LinkedIn, I am Alicia Victoria Hughes with my middle name. So you can search for me there, or good old-fashioned email, alicia@sparkingupleadership.com.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing such great, inspiring words of wisdom today.
This was great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thank you again for joining with me. It's always so great to talk with you and connect with you. That's what I loved about you, was how you presented with such positivity, happiness, and you genuinely care about the people that you work with.
I do, 100%. So I am just glad that you had me on to share.
Thank you again, everybody, for listening in for another great episode of Sabrina Sense Podcast, where I bring common sense to the world of work. I will make sure to share all of the information from today's episode in the description below the video on YouTube. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell for any upcoming videos that I will be posting. I hope you all have a amazing week. And until next time, bye for now.